Hi, everybody. We're trying to get this to work correctly today, which is a real struggle. Dr. Kennedy, if you are there, please join us. I'm also requesting you to join. Hi, Perez. Hi, Jerome. Hi, Anastasia. Hi, Marina. Hi, Emmy. Hi, Ula. I know that Dr. Kennedy is here because I'm talking to him in chat, but I don't see you and I can't add you. So I'm getting requests from other people to join. So something is working. I am sending the link to try to get them to join. It's not working, Harvey. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I see you. I finally see you. I think I can ask you to join. All right. Dr. Kennedy, I have, let's see if I can. Did that work? I'm accepting your request, Dr. Kennedy, and it's not working well. I'm so sorry about that. Try to accept it on your end. Hi, Carolina. Hi, Parva. Hi, Sandy. We're trying to get started. So sorry for the wait. Hi!
Hey, technology. Can you hear me?
I know, right? Oh, it's horrible today.
Oh,
It's generally not that good, but today is just
yeah.
all
No,
right. Thank
it's,
you so
of course.
much
Yeah.
for joining us and being patient while we get this started. So today, our second half, we're here with Dr. Russell Kennedy, and I'm a little bit of a fan. We've been posting his work before, and so we're very excited to have him here today. So we're going to get started with separation anxiety because that's how I found you.
Okay.
And I absolutely love your work. And we posted many times on the bridging technique. And so I would love for you to just get started.
Sure. What do you want to know? Just
uh,
talk
so
about.
anxiety in kids, in particular, why you really love the bridging technique, and what the focus is to try to help an anxious child, maybe especially at night.
Yeah. Well, I mean, bridging is something I learned from Gordon Neufeld, who's a developmental psychologist. And he talks about you never leave your child like hanging in a way, like when you drop them off at school or even when you go to bed at night. You say, well, I really look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning when you wake up and we'll make pancakes and we'll do this or we'll do that. Or when you drop them off at school, you say, I'll be right back here at 3:30. I really look forward to going over to the store to get that new thing you wanted, or, going to the park to play on the swings. You always bridge the next connection rather than just saying, okay, hey, have a good day kind of thing, because it does give their nervous system this sense that they are together when you're apart. And I think that's so important. Even for couples, it's important, but especially for kids.
Yeah. I love that. And okay, so it's a great segue because one of the reasons why I gravitated towards your work is because of how much you talk about anxiety living in the body, and that's our mission here, growing body awareness and how it interacts with mental health. And so I really want to give you time to talk about the origin of alarm in the body, and why that's so important to you, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was really struggling 10 years ago, I did LSD. And LSD at a very low point in my life. And it showed me that my anxiety actually had much more to do with the alarm that was held in my body. And me, it's in my solar plexus, than the thoughts of my mind. And then I just kind of took the ball and ran with it. And then I come up with this sort of theory that when you're a child, you experience trauma that's too much for you to bear. It gets pushed into your unconscious. You know, Freud would call it repression or suppression. And as the body is a representation of the unconscious mind, the body keeps the score. Eventually, that trauma reaches your body and gets stored, long-term storage in your body. And that's the part of you that kind of generates the anxious thoughts. There is this process that Stephen Porges, the inventor of polyvagal theory, calls interoception, which is where your mind is constantly reading your body, constantly reading your internal and external environment. In your external environment, it's called exteroception. In your internal environment, it's called interoception. And when you have this interoceptive sense, and it senses this old trauma that's still stored in you, that's still active, even though you may not feel it every day, then what it does is your mind, which is a compulsive meaning-making, make sense machine, says, oh, okay, we're alarmed. What do we have to be alarmed about? And then your mind creates all these stories of the things in your life that aren't going well. And because we are hugely influenced by the confirmation bias, because we thought these thoughts, we believe them. And then when you believe the thoughts, the alarm gets worse. And when the alarm gets worse, we actually paralyze the part of our brain, the premotor and the prefrontal areas, that would tell us, hey, these worries, they're really nothing to worry about. They're not a big deal. So not only do we make more threat when we're under survival physiology in the body, but the part of our brain that would tell us, hey, this isn't really anything to worry about, gets shut off. So we believe the worries. We're much more likely to believe our own worries and believe our own thoughts. And that just creates this huge cycle of anxiety in the mind, creating alarm in the body, and the alarm in the body, creating anxiety in the mind. So to heal, we have to break those two things apart. We have to break the alarm in the body, deal with it separately, and the thoughts of the mind, and deal with it separately. Because while they're together, it's virtually impossible to break that cycle, because your brain is paralyzed. Like literally, your frontal lobes are paralyzed by fear. So you can't think properly. Yet our brains will tell us, hey, you know, thinking has the answer. We have more, just do more thinking, ruminate, you'll finally come up with the answer. When actually it's just creating more of the problem. And then that's why anxiety is so hard to treat, because people get wrapped up in their thoughts and their worries, which of course makes the alarm worse, which makes the worries worse. And you don't even realize that you're caught in this cycle.
For sure. For sure. And you know what? I wanted you to segue to another thing we've covered, because this is such an important topic, and we always get an amazing response to it. The reason why people can't remember a lot of childhood memories.
Oh,
and
sure.
you're kind of already speaking to it. So go ahead.
Okay, well, there's just two main parts of our brain that are involved in memory. So there's the amygdala, which is pretty much involved in any fear-based mechanism in the human brain. The amygdala has something to do with it. And the hippocampus. And the hippocampus develops around 18 months, which is one of the reasons why we don't remember anything before 18 months, often before even a couple, 2-3 years, is the hippocampus hasn't developed yet. So the hippocampus kind of time date stamps our memories. So they will tell us that when I was 6, I went to school, I brought this record into school and it broke on the way to school. I remember that because I do remember that. Now, it time date stamped that thing, so that's when I was 6. Now, the amygdala, on the other hand, has no sense of time, but it will record everything that ever helped you or hurt you. Anything strongly emotional, the amygdala will record. So what you do is you'll wind up getting amygdala-only processing, because the stress chemicals of cortisol and epinephrine, adrenaline, paralyze the hippocampus. So when you're in a traumatic situation as a child, your amygdala is going crazy, recording this stuff, but your hippocampus is shut off, it's paralyzed, so it doesn't time date stamp that memory. So when it comes into your awareness today, it still feels like it's happening. So that's why, phobias, and when you get exposed to, say, a snake when you're 7 or 8 years old and you're deathly afraid of snakes. So your hippocampus wasn't able to tell you, hey, that happened when you were 7. That's still not happening now. So you get this amygdala only processing. So when that memory comes into awareness, it doesn't feel like it's been tagged from the past. It feels like it's still happening, but unconsciously. So we're not aware of it. So if you were bitten by a dog when you were 4, and you don't remember it, but you're deathly afraid of dogs, when you see a dog, especially a big dog, if you were bitten by a bigger dog, you will get transported. Part of you will get transported back to the time you're 4 years old. And that's why people lose their shit, because they're translated. I love the saying that all emotional overreactions are age regressions, because basically it's that amygdala that's kind of firing. Same thing. The amygdala is involved in, when you know where you were in 9/11, or when you know when there's a major event in the world, where you were at the time. Your amygdala is really involved in encoding that memory. So it's really important to understand that when your hippocampus is paralyzed by stress and trauma, you're not going to be able to encode memories in a way that you can retrieve them easily and consciously. They'll be retrieved unconsciously and they'll act in your body, but you won't sense that they're coming from the past.
Yeah, and I wanted you to basically, because you're kind of segueing to it, how alarm lives in the body and what's its goal when it's coming up like that. What exactly is it trying to get the person to do?
Yeah, I mean, as a neuroscientist, it's kind of like trauma living in the body is kind of it's a difficult thing to explain, right? I think it lives in the representation of the body, which is cerebral in some level. There's a part of our brain called the insula, which is kind of like the way station between mind and body to mind. People sometimes call it top-down processing or bottom-up processing. Bottom-up processing is from the body to the brain. Top down is from the brain to the body. So the amygdala is kind of like the way station for that. So the amygdala mediates this, what I call emotional signature. So if you were bitten by a dog as a child, there's part of you that feels exactly the same way now when you see a dog or encounter an aggressive dog that you did back when you were 4 years old. And the insula kind of mediates that sense. So when your body feels a certain way, like we said through interoception, your mind is going to create thoughts that are completely consistent with how your body feels. So if your body feels alarmed, I call it pointing the needle. If your body feels alarmed, it's going to point the needle in the red zone. So anything you think is likely going to be alarming. Anything that, and it's like a magnet. So anything that you've been worried about for the last 2 years is going to come into your mind like a magnet. Whereas if your body feels calm and relaxed, you're much more likely to think positive thoughts. But that's the thing, is that whatever your body feels, your mind is going to think. Now, there's this positive psychology movement that says, we can change the way our body feels with our mind, which you can do to some extent, but it's much more effective to calm your body first and use that to calm your mind than trying to use your mind to calm your body.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I think it's one of the newer movements in psychology that is going to be looked back upon as a real game changer. So I basically wanted you to speak on what would you recommend a parent that's dealing with a really anxious child, but they can't really pinpoint what it is, like the trigger
Right,
isn't obvious.
right. Well, first of all, I mean, I think kids are coming into a world now that's much more energetically active. Like if you compare the world in the 1960s, to the world now, there's a lot more negative energy in the world now. And you can even point it down to the parents are more stressed. It may not be just this sort of universal energy in the world that's more stressful. It may be that the parents are more stressed. And when the parents are stressed, the kids get stressed. Like often people will say, can you talk to my 12-year-old son or my 14-year-old daughter or whatever? It's like, well, first I'm going to talk to you, because basically they're reading you. They're
I
reading your
like
anxiety and they're acting it out. So it's really kind of important to understand that our children kind of absorb whatever's going on in the world. So some people will come in and see me and they'll go, look, I had a great childhood. My parents were awesome. but I still have this horrible anxiety. And often I'll say to them, okay, go back and ask your parents if you were separated from them when you were before the age of 5. And, if a kid is separated from their mother before the age of 5, it makes an imprint on them, depending on how sensitive that kid is and depending on who they were left with as well. Like if you're left with like a grandmother that lives in the house, and they're used to them and that kind of stuff, probably minimal impairment. But if you leave, if you've got a 2-year-old and you leave, I do have people that said, my parents and my older brother left when I was 2 and they went for a month and they came back. That's a tough situation, especially for a sensitive child. So, and on top of all that, we have, screens these days. Like there's something in our brains called the social engagement system, which is eye contact, tone of voice, prosody of voice, body language, and facial expression. Now, we're not getting that through screens with our kids. So we really need this face-to-face interaction with children, which is sort of what parents can do, is you can start having more face-to-face interactions with your kids. Like I envision, around the dinner table, you can't do this with teenagers because they hate everything. But with children, it's like, what's my face doing? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I angry? Like try to show them what expressions, what emotions are coming out through your face, because the kids aren't getting that. And we need that to mature our social engagement system, because the social engagement system is what allows us to soothe ourselves as well as soothe other people. And our kids aren't maturing that social engagement system. So when they go to university, their phones doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore to soothe them, because up until that time, there's no boredom, there's no frustration, because all you do is you go to your phone, which is another reason why our kids are suffering, because our kids never really learn how to deal with negative emotion, because as soon as you feel negative, you just go to your phone. Like when I was a kid, if I was bored, I was freaking bored. There was nothing, I had to deal with it. Like I had to deal with it. So now if you're bored, you just go to your phone. There is no boredom anymore. So I think
Yeah.
it's really important to understand that the screens are really, making things much worse for kids.
Yeah, and I wanted you to speak on basically avoidance and how that it kind of makes anxiety so much worse, because I think you're speaking to exactly how people, me included, everybody else, gets rid of anxious moments
Sure.
where you just like shift to something else, right?
Yeah.
So how is that, what can a parent do?
I think touch is really important for kids. I think we have really, with this whole thing about child abuse and you can't touch kids and that kind of thing. I think it's really created this milieu where we're kind of moving away from touching even our own children, right? So I think it's important to sort of, one of the things that I do with parents is I say, put your hand on your child's heart, and then put your other hand on their back about the same level. So you kind of encircle their heart with your hands, and just sit there for like a minute or 2 minutes. Like I said, the teenagers, they won't tolerate it, but the kids, the young kids will love it, and it's just like, this is us connecting. This is how we're going to connect. Now, if you can make eye contact and that kind of stuff too, that's great as well. But touch is so important for kids, and we're losing that as well. Eye contact, prosody of voice, tone of voice. Play with your kids. Play is one of those things that activates both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system at the same time. So ideally, it's kind of like a teeter-totter. So when your sympathetic fight or flight is up, your parasympathetic rest and digest is down. And when your parasympathetic rest and digest is up, your sympathetic is supposed to be down. Now, with trauma with kids and with anxiety with kids, we get this co-activation where the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, kind of like the gas and the brake, are being pressed at the same time. So the kids don't really know what to do with that negative energy. So play is one of those things that actually co-activates the parasympathetic and the sympathetic in a positive way. So we're starting to, when you just get that co-activation in a negative kind of role as a child, you never really learn how to deal with it. It's a very uncomfortable emotion to be in. But if you institute play with your kids, like play with them, and if you can, face-to-face play is probably the best, but just any kind of play is helpful to reactivate that system and recalibrate that system so that they know that when their system gets activated like that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I love that. First of all, the point about physical affection is
Yeah.
so spot on, and I mean, like people are touching, hugging. I mean, if you know what it does to your physiology
Yeah,
and just not doing it less and less, I mean, of course, people are more anxious and alone than ever,
of
right?
course.
And as soon as you start doing it, I mean, the relationships change.
Yeah.
So I love that. Um, could you go ahead
No, no, I was just gonna
if you
say,
want to?
and it just one of those things is that if you grew up in an environment where kind of love wasn't safe or love was conditional or whatever, connection can be really painful because we want it so badly, but our experience of love wasn't that holistic as children. And if that's the case, we resist hugs. There's a lot of people say, I don't like hugs, because it's really about connection. And if connection for you as a child was painful, like for me, my dad was schizophrenic and bipolar, so I never really knew when he was going to go off. So I kind of, kept my affections close to myself after a while because I would see him go psychotic a number of times. That I kind of the unconscious program I got that was love isn't safe. And a lot of people get it in different ways. Like if you have an abusive parent or if you have a neglectful parent or whatever, you learn that love isn't safe. And then when you learn when there's only love and fear in the universe, which is true, if you don't trust love, you're going to be filled up with a batch of fear. That's what it's going to happen.
Yeah, you're set up for failure right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, for sure. So I love your work on childhood adverse events and its impact, especially on anxiety. Could you speak to, because we've gotten this before, a child has already dealt with a very strong event. What would you do as a parent? How do you, is it just play? Is it just making sure that you have a lot of one-on-one time and things like that? Or what would you kind of advise for a parent dealing with that situation?
Yeah, it depends on how old the child is too, and how conscious and cognitively aware of it they are. But trying to find it in their body. When grandma died, like, is there a place inside of you that you feel that hurts? It's like, yeah, my heart hurts. It's like, put your hand over that then. Get them to put their hand over it, and then you put your hand over their hand. Find the somatic reference point to that negative emotion because that'll help them process it even more. So I think we live in this day where we sort of worship the cognitive mind, and kids aren't that cognitive. They live in the moment. They live in feeling. Like feeling is their language, and they don't really understand words. Like kind words are wonderful, absolutely, but touch and getting into that visceral somatic sense is critical for them to process the emotion fully. They can process it a bit through language, but the structures in our brains that house a lot of these programs, amygdala, hippocampus, pons, medulla, like deep in the brainstem, none of those things understand words. Their language is feeling. So you really have to use that language, that feeling language, because that's what'll change it. That's what'll make a big difference. Language helps, the cognitive stuff helps, but it's feeling, especially with children, especially young children, that's their language. And we have to communicate with them in their language.
Yeah, I love that, and that's an amazing point. That is their language. So I basically wanted to give you a last couple of minutes to touch on anything you wanted to touch on, and I wanted you to everybody, please. I learned so much from your page. Please head over to his Instagram. I mean, the nerdiness and the details. I mean, every single post. So I really hope that you guys go over there and please check out his books. I mean, I saw somebody talking about how good your last book is, and I absolutely agree. Please check that out as well. But just the last few minutes, Dr. Russell.
Oh, yeah, I guess it's just really understanding and looking at anxiety in a new way. It's more of a feeling-based issue rather than a thinking one. And one of the things that I say a lot is you can't fix a feeling problem with a thinking solution. And I think in this society, as I was saying, we get so used to worshiping the mind and dealing with things in a cognitive sense that we're losing feeling. That's the whole basis of mindfulness. Like mindfulness is basically getting into feeling and staying there. Now, I think mindfulness kind of falls short in a way in that they get you into your body, but they don't take advantage of that by going deeper into the child that still lives in you. Yes, it's great to feel. It's great to taste your food. It's great to be in the moment. It's great to feel your feet. It's great to breathe. It's great to feel your breath. But unless you link that with a connection with yourself, especially your younger self, things aren't really going to change too much. I mean, it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it. You know, one of the things that the analogies that I love to use, it's like you're in a rowboat, there's a hole in the rowboat, it's filling up with water. Now you can bail water out, which is kind of like cognitive therapies, and you know, it'll make you feel better in the short term. But if you want to heal from anxiety in the long term, this goes for kids as well as adults, you have to fix that hole. You have to fix the alarm in the body, address the alarm in the body, feel it, allow it to be there. But a lot of us don't want to go back and feel that pain. We don't want to go back to the child in us and feel that pain because they went through bullying, they went through stress, they went through, you know, abuse, loss, abandonment, you know, all this kind of stuff, and we don't want to go back there. So the adult in us doesn't want to visit that child because the child holds all the pain, but the child is asking for our attention, and the adult just keeps pushing the child away, and you know, zombie scrolls Instagram or goes shopping or you know, goes online or watches porn or whatever it is, that the distraction of the moment. You know, you're kind of pushing that child away, and the more you push that child away, the more fearful you become, and the more you need to lean on your addictions at that point. So it creates this vicious cycle where you're never really present with yourself. And being present with yourself early on is freaking painful. You know, it's not easy. I mean, people say, oh, mindfulness, be in the moment, but you know, when things settle down and the dust clears a bit, you know, you start seeing what happened when you were a child. And it's not all about trauma, for sure. A lot of it is, though. And there's not a child, like one of the sayings I love is that nobody rides for free. Like nobody gets through this life. You see people that are, you know, have lots of money or whatever, but nobody rides for free. Everybody's got some sort of emotional thing in them. And it's your ability to kind of connect with the deeper emotional part of you, see them, hear them, love them, and show them they're protected, which is basically what you need to do with a child. See them, hear them, love them, and show them they're protected. Then they can grow into their authentic self. And so can you. You know, it's never too late as far as that kind of stuff goes. But I think we get so wrapped up in believing that our minds can fix everything when they can't. It's not a mind problem. It's a feeling. It's a body problem. We have to speak the same language that the problem is encoded with.
Yeah, for sure. Just to answer a few of the questions I see, Dr. Kennedy is listed on our anxiety page as the first professional. You'll see his links there to his books, which is what you're asking me for. Also, somebody's asking if you are taking clients. It looks like you're going to be getting an email or two. Are you taking clients?
Selectively, like I do intuitive anxiety assessments on people. They last about 90 minutes. They cost $500 US, so they're not cheap. But what I do recommend for people is either my book, which is 20 bucks, or I have a new program called MBRX, which is Mind Body Solution to Healing Your Anxiety. It's an online course. It's relatively short. I think it's like 2.5 hours in total. And it's got meditations in there on how to find the alarm in your body, and a yoga nidra that's kind of connects your adult self with your child self and connects your mind and your body. Because I do feel that anxiety is a separation of adult and child within you, like we were talking about, and your mind and your body get separated. So those are two, like, you know, less expensive options. I do see people, but it's kind of expensive to see me in person. But I only do 3 a week, so that's why.
It should be. But
it should be.
if you if you do want to listen to Dr. Kennedy speak more, you do have a podcast, don't you?
I do. Yeah, it's called, my book's called Anxiety RX. The podcast is called the Anxiety RX Podcast. And usually if you just Google like the Anxiety MD, not the Anxiety Doctor, but the Anxiety MD, all my stuff comes up. I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, guys, first of all, thank you for joining us. It was amazing live today. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Obviously, I will continue to be a fan because our purpose is to increase body awareness and mental health at the child level, and how important it is and what's missing in our current programs in schools. So obviously, we love what you talk about. I hope you guys go and visit his pages, follow him, learn from him. There's so much there. And again, thank you.
Thanks so much. Anytime. I'm happy to talk anytime.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.